back to Los Angeles and then to New York for a week.
For 20 years, millions of Americans watched Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty's romance unfold on Gunsmoke. The sexual tension was so intense, Las Vegas bookies took bets on their first kiss. But that kiss never came. Now, after decades of speculation, James Arness finally reveals why TV's most famous couple kept their love story a secret, and the surprising reason he refused to kiss his co-star on screen. James Arness was born on May 26, 1923, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He was the oldest child in a family that didn't have much money, especially during the Great Depression. His father worked as a traveling salesman, and his mother later wrote for a newspaper. Life wasn't easy, but James found joy in nature. He loved being outside, and this connection to the outdoors stayed with him for the rest of his life. When James was just 11, he saw something he would never forget. A huge flood hit Minnehaha Creek, destroying bridges and homes in its path. Watching the power of nature left a deep impression on him. Growing up, James had to take on different jobs to help his family. He delivered jewelry, loaded heavy boxes onto train cars, and even worked as a lumberjack in Idaho when he was only 16. That summer in the woods was tough, but it gave James a sense of independence and strength. School wasn't easy for James. He had trouble learning because of undiagnosed ADHD and dyslexia, which made reading and focusing very hard for him. Back then, people didn't understand these conditions, so James was labeled as a poor student. Once, during a class reading, he stumbled over the words so much that his classmates laughed at him. That moment hurt his confidence and made school even harder. Despite this, James discovered something he was good at: acting. He joined the school's theater group and found that performing came naturally. Acting gave him a sense of accomplishment he hadn't felt before. After graduating high school in 1942, James dreamed of becoming a Navy fighter pilot. But there was a problem. He was 6 feet 7 inches tall, too tall for the Navy's requirements. Instead, he was drafted into the Army in 1943 at just 19 years old. After training in Georgia, James was sent to fight in World War II with the 3rd Infantry Division. His first combat experience came during the Allied landing at Anzio, Italy, in 1944. Because he was so tall, James was chosen to be the first soldier off the landing craft. His job was to check if the water was shallow enough for the others to safely land. Wading through freezing water while enemy bullets flew overhead was terrifying, but James did his duty. Just days later, James was injured during a dangerous night patrol. A German machine gun hit his leg and foot, leaving him in severe pain. Somehow, he managed to get out of the line of fire and survive. During the same battle, a grenade exploded near him, throwing him off the ground. He stayed flat on the ground while bullets whizzed just inches above him. Medics found him and treated his injuries. They called it a $1 million wound because it meant he would be sent back home. For his bravery, James received both the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star. He spent more than a year recovering in hospitals, enduring multiple surgeries to remove bullet fragments from his leg. Even after his recovery, the injuries caused him pain for the rest of his life. But James never let that hold him back. Back home in Minneapolis, he briefly worked as a radio announcer. But while recovering from his injuries, he had discovered a passion for acting through small hospital theater shows meant to lift soldiers' spirits. That passion pushed him to take a bold step. On September 1st, 1945, with only $50 in his pocket, he boarded a Greyhound bus and headed to Los Angeles, hoping to make it as an actor. Life in Los Angeles wasn't easy. Arness was 6 feet 7 inches tall, and even finding a bed that fit him was a challenge. At first, he stayed at the YMCA, sleeping diagonally on a bed that was too short. To survive, he worked odd jobs. He helped carpenters, worked as a bouncer at a nightclub, and even became a lifeguard at Venice Beach, despite his lingering injuries. His first real connection to acting came when he got a job as a stagehand at the Pasadena Playhouse. he would sneak into acting classes, watching and learning whenever he had the chance. Arness's towering height, which made life hard in some ways, turned out to be his ticket into Hollywood. While working as a movie theater usher, he was noticed by a talent scout looking for tall extras. That lucky encounter got him his first small role in the 1947 movie The Farmer's Daughter. He played one of Loretta Young's brothers, though his name didn't appear in the credits. Over the next year, he kept landing extra roles in movies like Roses Are Red and Battleground. One of his strangest early roles came in Man from Texas, where he played a Neanderthal man. He spent hours in makeup to enhance his features and stood nearly naked in the freezing cold, wearing only a loincloth. Despite the discomfort, he later said that experience convinced him he was willing to do whatever it took to succeed in acting. Arness's first big break came later in 1947, again in The Farmer's Daughter. The film's director, H.C. Potter, had noticed his natural screen presence and decided to expand his role. This time, Arness played Peter Holstrom, one of Loretta Young's brothers, with a Swedish accent he learned by listening to relatives. Critics praised his performance, calling it an impressive debut, and the movie was a hit. More importantly, it earned Arness a 7-year contract with RKO Pictures. As part of the deal, the studio paid for him to take acting classes, which he eagerly took advantage of. In 1951, Arness's career took a major turn. He starred in The Thing from Another World. He played a terrifying alien, chosen because of his towering height of 6 feet 7 inches. But wearing the alien costume was no easy job. It was heavy, awkward, and hard to see out of. In one scene, he was supposed to burst through a door, but instead, he accidentally walked into the wrong wall, causing the whole set to shake. This mistake delayed filming for hours and cost the production a lot of money. Still, audiences loved the movie. Even though James's face was never shown, he enjoyed going to theaters to watch people's reactions, sitting quietly in the audience. Once, he overheard someone talking about how scary the alien was, not realizing the actor was sitting right next to them. His alien thing caught the attention of John Wayne, who was a fan of the film. Wayne was curious about the actor behind the mask. When he met Arness in person, he was impressed by his rugged looks and strong presence. Wayne invited Arness to his office and, in 1952, offered him a contract with his production company, Batjack Productions. The deal was unique. It let Arness work exclusively with Wayne's team, while also taking other roles with Wayne's approval. This partnership would change Arness's career forever. Wayne and Arness worked together on 4 movies, starting with Big Jim McLean in 1952. In their second movie, Hondo, something remarkable happened. During filming in Mexico, John Wayne's horse was startled by a rattlesnake and bolted. Without hesitation, James chased after him, grabbed the reins, and stopped the horse. Wayne was so impressed that he later recommended James for the role of Matt Dillon, helping him land the job that would make him a household name. They worked together again in Island in the Sky in 1953, where James played a pilot. He insisted on doing his own stunts, including a dangerous scene where he had to jump from a moving plane onto a frozen lake. The stunt went wrong, and James fell through the ice. He was freezing and in danger of drowning, but Wayne jumped in and pulled him out, joking later that he couldn't let James die before he became a star. Their final movie together was The Sea Chase in 1955. James almost missed out on the role because of a scheduling conflict, but Wayne personally called to sort things out, showing how much he believed in James's talent. James worked hard to show he could play many different roles, not just Western heroes. In 1954, he surprised audiences by playing a Greek sculptor in The Golden Mask of Agamemnon. He even traveled to Greece and studied the language to prepare. Critics loved his performance, though the film wasn't widely seen. Later that same year, he took on a very demanding role in The Creeping Unknown, playing a scientist slowly turning into an alien. He spent hours every day in makeup and lost a lot of weight during filming because the costume was so hot and uncomfortable. James didn't just shine on screen, he also worked on stage. In 1953, he performed in a play called The Caine Mutiny Court-Martial, doing 8 shows a week, while still filming movies during the day. This intense schedule pushed him to his limits, and he collapsed from exhaustion after the final performance. But it taught him an important lesson about balancing work and rest. By the time he was cast as Matt Dillon in Gunsmoke in 1955, James had already proven he could handle anything Hollywood threw at him. However, he didn't land the role easily. In fact, when the producers of Gunsmoke were looking for their lead actor, Wayne was actually their first choice. But Wayne turned them down because he didn't want to leave the movies for TV. Instead, he recommended Arness. Wayne believed Arness was perfect for the role and encouraged him to take the chance. Even with Wayne's support, Arness hesitated before accepting the role. At the time, television was seen as a step down from movies, and many actors feared being labeled as TV stars, which could hurt their chances in Hollywood. Arness worried that appearing in a weekly show might make people tired of seeing him. He also knew that new shows often got canceled quickly, which could leave him stuck without opportunities. However, Wayne convinced him to take the role. He told Arness that being on Gunsmoke would give him a chance to improve his skills and become a household name. James Arness played Matt Dillon on Gunsmoke for nearly 40 years, starting in 1955 and continuing until 1994. He starred in every episode of the original series and all 5 made-for-TV movies. That level of dedication to one role is almost unheard of in TV history and shows just how much he believed in the character and the show. Arness worked hard to bring Matt Dillon to life. He didn't just go through the motions. He always tried to improve. Sometimes, he said, he could slip into the role easily, but other times, a good script would push him to show different sides of Dillon. This effort kept the character fresh and interesting, even after so many years. What's surprising is that he never got tired of the role, even with the grueling demands of a weekly TV show. He had other opportunities but turned them down, saying he just didn't feel the need to try something new. He also gave his all to make the role believable. Standing at 6 feet 7 inches, Arness had to learn to ride horses despite his size, and he even did many of his own stunts. He dyed his blonde hair darker to fit the rugged image of a Western lawman, and trained with a professional gunslinger to learn how to draw and shoot like a pro. These small details made Matt Dillon feel real and helped set Gunsmoke apart from other shows of the time. As the series went on, Arness added more depth to the character. Early on, Dillon was a straightforward, by-the-book sheriff, but over time, he became more complex, facing tough moral decisions and showing a more human side. This evolution kept viewers hooked and gave the show a sense of realism that audiences loved. Gunsmoke itself was groundbreaking. It ran for 20 years, airing 635 episodes from 1955 to 1975. For a long time, it was the longest-running live-action series in U.S. history. The show was also hugely popular. Between 1957 and 1961, it was the #1 show on TV, drawing over 40 million viewers each week. At its peak, almost half of all U.S. households tuned in. That kind of success is hard to imagine today. The show didn't just win viewers, it also earned respect. It won 5 Emmy Awards and a Peabody Award for its realistic portrayal of life in the American West. Over the years, it adapted to changing times, starting as a half-hour black-and-white series, later expanding to an hour and switching to color in 1966. Even when CBS tried to cancel it in 1967, fans protested so strongly that the network brought it back, and it ran for another 8 years. Meanwhile, James Arness and Amanda Blake had incredible chemistry on Gunsmoke. As Marshal Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty Russell, they made viewers believe in their connection. For 20 years, their relationship on screen kept fans coming back for more. From the moment Amanda Blake joined the show in 1955, it was clear there was something special between them. Their very first scene had to be reshot several times because their chemistry was so intense it pushed the limits of what was acceptable for TV at the time. Their connection wasn't just about romance. Off-screen, they became close friends, and this friendship showed in their performances. They often added little touches or glances that weren't in the script, making their characters feel real. By the early 1960s, they were improvising so much that writers started leaving parts of the script blank, trusting them to bring the scenes to life. This natural connection led to rumors that they were romantically involved in real life. Fans were so curious that James Arness received dozens of letters every week asking about their relationship. The show dropped hints to keep fans guessing. In one episode, Matt is clearly jealous when Kitty shows interest in another man, but nothing is said directly. In another, Kitty risks her life to save Matt, but their reunion is subtle and emotional without being romantic. The producers even wrote moments where it looked like something might have happened, like when Matt and Kitty were seen leaving the same hotel room early in the morning. But these situations were always explained away, leaving fans to wonder. The obsession spread beyond just the fans. In Las Vegas, people started placing bets on whether Matt and Kitty would ever kiss on the show. The bets got so popular that over $1 million was wagered before the authorities shut it down. Even professors got involved. One academic wrote a paper arguing that the unresolved tension between Matt and Kitty was the key to the show's long-lasting success. James Arness had his own thoughts about why Kitty and Matt never got together on Gunsmoke. In his autobiography, James Arness, An Autobiography, he admitted he knew fans wanted to see the romance blossom between the two characters. He wrote, "Over the years, fans have often asked me about my character Matt Dillon's relationship with Kitty, and why it never seemed to progress beyond the air of the romantic between us." Arness explained that this decision wasn't his, it came from the producers. Instead of diving into a full-blown romance, they chose to keep it subtle. Arness believed this worked well, saying, "Our relationship was downplayed because they thought it was more titillating to leave matters to the viewer's imagination." While the characters flirted, hugged, and shared meaningful stares, the romance was never shown outright. According to Burns, there was an unspoken deal that after Matt closed up the Long Branch saloon, he might visit Kitty upstairs, but it was never explored on screen. The idea was to keep things suggestive, but not explicit. As writer Burgoyne explained, they just had the eyeball routine to keep it a mystery. You knew something was going on, but you didn't know what. The producers believed that if Matt ever kissed Kitty, they'd have to escalate the romance in future episodes, which might have changed the tone of the series. Arness believed the restraint worked perfectly for the show. He told the Archive of American Television, "I think they felt that. You could only go so far with it, and then you'd have to change the character and nature of the show, so they kept it in that groove. That seemed to work because we used to get a lot of mail from people, particularly women, who said, 'Why don't you get Matt and Kitty together more?' And that's the kind of mail that we want to get. You want to have them eager to tune in and see, so they kept it at that level purposely, and I think it worked out awfully well." Amanda Blake, who played Kitty, agreed that romance was never the show's focus. In interviews, she explained that the producers and cast deliberately avoided it. "Of course, it's traditional that Western heroes like their horses way better than they do girls. I can assure you that Marshal Dillon likes me, Kitty Russell, better than he does his horse. I can also assure you that he won't ever be caught kissing a horse." Blake also pointed out that Gunsmoke was meant for everyone, young and old. If viewers want visible romance between Kitty and the Marshal, They'll have to supply it themselves in their imaginations, she said, as I've had to do. The show was about the Old West, not love stories. That's why the mystery of Kitty and Matt's relationship kept audiences hooked for so long. After Gunsmoke, James Arness's life took some surprising turns. Even though he was famous as Marshal Matt Dillon, finding good roles wasn't easy. In 1976, Arness made a big change and took on the role of Zeb McCahan in the miniseries How the West Was Won. This show let him show a different side of his acting skills. The first episode aired on January 19, 1976, and was called The McCahans. It was based on a 1962 movie, but the TV version had its own story and characters. The show became a full series in 1977 and ran until 1979. It was a huge production, costing $750,000 per episode. Very expensive for TV at the time. Viewers loved its big, adventurous stories, especially in Europe. In Sweden, it became so popular that they aired it 11 times between 1980 and 2000. The show wasn't afraid to be intense. In one episode, Zeb had to make a heartbreaking decision. He mercy-killed his nephew after he was tortured. This shocked viewers and led to the show being paused in some places. In 1981, Arness made another bold move with the police drama McClane's Law. This time, he played a retired detective, Jim McClane, who went back to work after 15 years. The show felt real because a former LAPD detective helped create it. One episode about police brutality in 1982 caused a lot of controversy and almost got the show canceled. The series also stood out for showing early computer technology being used to solve crimes, which was rare back then. Arness returned to Gunsmoke in the 1980s and 1990s with TV movies. The first one, Gunsmoke. Return to Dodge aired in 1987 and was a huge hit, with 33 million viewers. At first, Arness didn't want to play Matt Dillon again, but CBS offered him $1 million per movie, the highest pay for any TV actor at the time. One movie, Gunsmoke, The Last Apache in 1990, surprised fans when it revealed Matt had a daughter with another woman. This upset viewers who wanted Matt and Miss Kitty to end up together, but the strong ratings kept the movies going. After the last Gunsmoke movie in 1994, Arness mostly retired but stayed active in other ways. In 1997, he camped out in freezing Alaska to protest oil drilling and raise awareness about wildlife conservation. His final acting role came in 2001 in Gunsmoke, One Last Bullet. Even though he was 78 and had severe arthritis, he still performed one last stunt, mounting a horse without help, as a tribute to his character. Meanwhile, James Arness's life was full of love, loss, and generosity. His first marriage began when he was just 24 years old. He married Virginia Chapman on February 16, 1948, while still trying to make it in Hollywood. They had 2 children together, Rolf and Jenny Lee, and James also adopted Virginia's son, Craig, from her previous relationship. For a while, they seemed happy, but their marriage had problems. Virginia struggled with alcohol and mental health issues, which caused a lot of stress in their family. Even though they tried to make it work, they divorced in 1960. James took care of all 3 children after the divorce. Sadly, Virginia's struggles didn't end, and she died from a drug overdose in 1977. It took 18 years for James to find love again. On December 16, 1978, he married Janet Surtees. Janet was 18 years younger than him and brought peace and happiness into his life. Their marriage was strong and lasted until James passed away in 2011. Janet supported him during the later years of his career, especially when he returned as Matt Dillon in Gunsmoke TV movies during the 1990s. She also helped him enjoy life away from the spotlight, sharing his love for boating and helping him stay private. Their relationship was calm and steady, very different from the struggles he faced in his first marriage. One of the hardest moments in James's life was losing his daughter, Jenny Lee. She was born on May 23, 1950, but tragically died on May 12, 1975, just before her 25th birthday. Jenny had battled drug addiction for years, much like her mother. She died from a drug overdose at the family's home in Malibu. This loss devastated James. He was a very private man, so he didn't talk about it much, but those who knew him could see how much it changed him. At the time, Gunsmoke was in its final season, and James used his work to cope with his grief, delivering some of his best performances. After Jenny's death, James quietly supported mental health and addiction recovery efforts. He made donations to rehab centers and suicide prevention programs, but didn't seek any public attention for it. He also became very protective of his other children, Rolf and Craig, working hard to keep them out of the public eye. James also showed his generous side in big ways. In 1968, he donated his 1,400-acre ranch in Simi Valley, California, to the Brandeis Institute, a youth organization. This ranch was worth $2 million at the time, which would be about $15 million today. James had bought the ranch in 1960 and loved spending time there with his family. But as his children got older and used it less, he decided to give it to the Brandeis Institute. He admired their work in promoting education and cultural understanding and thought the land would help them expand their programs. This was especially meaningful because James wasn't Jewish, but he believed in helping people regardless of their background. James didn't stop there. He also gave his 60-foot catamaran, Sea Smoke, to the Boy Scouts to help with their maritime programs. Along with Janet, he supported causes like United Cerebral Palsy, donating money from his website to help those in need. James never sought recognition for his generosity. He just wanted to give back quietly. On June 3, 2011, he passed away at 88 years old from natural causes. His death marked the end of a remarkable chapter in television history. Even in his final days, Arness thought about his fans. Before he passed, he wrote a farewell letter that was shared on his website later. In it, he thanked everyone for supporting him over the years. He talked about how grateful he was to have lived such a good life. He also said he was lucky to work on shows like Gunsmoke, The Thing, and How the West Was Won, and to have so many friends along the way. Throughout his life, Arness was honored for his impact on the entertainment world. In 1960, just a few years into Gunsmoke, he earned a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 1751 Vine Street. This was proof of how quickly he had become a household name. But his recognition didn't stop there. In 1981, he was inducted into the Western Performers Hall of Fame at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. This was a huge honor, placing him alongside the greatest stars in Western history. Years later, in 2006, he was added to the Santa Clarita Walk of Western Stars, showing how much his work continued to be celebrated. Arness's role as Marshal Matt Dillon on Gunsmoke brought him 3 Emmy nominations in the late 1950s. Although he didn't win, these nominations proved how much his work was respected. His popularity went far beyond awards, though. In 1989, People magazine named him one of the top 25 television stars of all time during the 50th anniversary of television. Then, in 1996, TV Guide included him on their 50 Greatest TV Stars of All Time list. All of this showed how much audiences loved him and how his work continued to inspire even years after Gunsmoke ended.